This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.
Sprawling metropolis on America's West Coast, Los Angeles isn't just one city. It is many cities. This week, we're going to pull back the layers on the City of Angels. David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. I'm having a great week. So this week we're talking about, sometimes derided city. Sometimes people don't feel so strongly about Los Angeles. I love LA. I mean, I don't know. How did you feel about LA?
I've got mixed feelings on LA. There's aspects of it I love. It is big and sprawling, and it is certainly not a walkable city. It is not.
No, that's famously it is not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that being said, it's if you're ready to embrace the Americana and the cheesiness of it, there's a lot to dig into there.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I grew up. I was calling myself a TV kid. I loved TV growing up. I watched a lot of television shows. So I had many happy family memories of, TGIF, gathering in front of the TV. Friday night, we're watching all our favorite shows. And so when I go to LA, it's just like pure magic, because this is where all those shows were. It wasn't the golden age of Hollywood, but Who's the Boss and Growing Pains and all these shows. That's what I grew up on, and I still love TV and movies. And so when I can go to the place that gave birth to all of these amazing memories, really, for me, it's just pure magic. So I am. You talk about cheesiness. I embrace every part of this city. So I don't know. What do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about hotels? You want to talk about where to stay? You've got a couple places that you enjoyed. You were just down there, right?
Yeah, I was just in LA
a week, 2 weeks ago.
Probably about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we were down in LA, spent some time out in Anaheim at Disneyland, which I'm sure we'll talk about that on another episode sometime. But then we spent some time in LA and further up the coast as well. A couple of great hotels that I always like to stay at. And one thing I will say is that hotels do tend to be a little bit on the spendier side. I tend to find in LA, at least most of the ones that I've gravitated towards here on this list. But one place that we love was the 60 Beverly Hills. Used to be called the Thompson Beverly Hills. About $300 to $400 a night, but great rooftop infinity pool. Great place for celebrity sighting. Right on the sort of edge of Beverly Hills there. Very cool property. It's good fun. And then if all these places I would say are really great places to immerse yourself in that celebrity culture aspect of LA. So the other two that I would call out is W Hollywood, right in Hollywood Boulevard, right in the center of, the Walk of Stars. That's a cool property. Always like that. And just a few blocks away from that is the Roosevelt Hollywood, which is, one of the historic hotels in town. It's where they many years ago used to host the Academy Awards. It's been, probably about 10 years ago, they revamped it and have made it into a more upscale boutique hotel. Again, it's in that $300 to $400 a night range, but three places that I would say if you really, really want to immerse yourself in that, the LA experience are great places to stay.
Yeah.
How about you?
Absolutely. I mean, I do love the Sunset Strip. It's just technically West Hollywood, but really it's all LA. I think I have the claim to fame that I've stayed in every hotel on the Sunset Strip. So there's probably 5 or 6 hotels. Sunset Strip is this stretch of Sunset Boulevard that runs through West Hollywood. And I loved, I loved the Sunset Tower Hotel. It was Truman Capote wrote, everything that ever happened here. So it was really a celebrity magnet. Back in the day, they say John Wayne, it was like an apartment hotel many years ago. Now it's a traditional hotel, but they say John Wayne kept a cow on his balcony, so his guests could have fresh milk, for breakfast. They could milk the cow. put it in their coffee at breakfast, So that is, I mean, and to this day you can go to their poolside bar, their rooftop bar, and you can spot celebrities, which is super cool. One of my other, shout outs here is for kind of an off the radar hotel that I thought was extremely special. I mean, so it's in the San Fernando Valley. I was talking to a friend of mine from LA yesterday, and I mentioned this hotel to him, and I said, I stayed in this hotel in the Valley. I loved it. He goes, and he lives in LA. He said, there are hotels in the Valley? He wasn't aware that there were hotels, but it is, it's called the Garland. It is close to Universal Studios Hollywood. They actually have a shuttle that runs regularly. You can go to Universal. And it is this old Hollywood vintage, I mean, beautifully maintained, beautifully renovated, but that kind of vintage, like premium, like 1950s, 1960s feel. Pool, hot tubs, fire pits, really beautiful, really nice restaurant. So it's almost like a resort stay. Like if you're looking for a little bit of sun and you're looking to sit by a pool, but you also want a few things to do, Garland is really a great hotel. So, that's kind of my new, a little bit off the beaten path, but one of my favorite places to stay in LA. So when you go down there, what do you do? What are some of your favorite things?
Well, you mentioned briefly Universal Studios. And it was interesting. I was talking to my kids about that following our trip, but they didn't realize that in addition to being a theme park, that it still is a working studio. And that's one of the great things is that you get both a theme park experience and you also get to see a bit of the inner workings of a Hollywood movie studio. So, and the other thing that's great about Universal, unlike a lot of the other well-known theme parks in and around LA, it's right in the center of the city. You're right in LA, and you can get that sort of theme park experience and the movie studio experience.
Yeah.
There's some great farmers markets, and maybe we'll talk more about those when we get into the where to eat. But so that's another thing I would highly recommend doing.
Yeah.
And then one thing that we stumbled upon on this most recent trip, right on Hollywood Boulevard near the W Hotel, one of the best music stores I've ever seen. Old vinyl records, but any music memorabilia you can think of as well. This massive music store on Hollywood Boulevard called Amoeba Music. If you got teens you're traveling with, that was awesome for us. They spent many hours there and were lots of cool vinyl, lots of cool band memorabilia. Very cool spot as well. How about you? What are some of your favorites to do in LA?
Amazing. I will say, I mean, I don't have kids, but I have a teenage niece and nephew, and it is harder to appear cool to them, the older I get. And so knowing a cool music store, I think that is definitely a good path to follow. You talked about Universal. I love Universal. When I was back in LA most recently, a couple of months ago, I did the studio there when I was staying at the Garland. Totally agree. I also love all the other studio tours. So I've done every studio tour, TV Kid again. I've done Paramount, Sony. I did Warner Brothers. And it is just such a cool experience to get behind the scenes. So, a lot of these tours will take you onto the back lot, and you afterwards recognize sets that you see on television shows. I was watching an episode of Seinfeld the other night, one of my favorite shows, and they have a New York backlot, where they shoot these scenes, and you can recognize these exterior shots from Seinfeld that are supposed to be in New York, but you say, oh, I stood in that spot on the studio tour in LA. So and you get kind of the insider stories. It depends on what guide you get, but I won't say it on the show because it was mentioned to me off the record. But some interesting. I will say, there was a very positive story about Tom Hanks I heard on a studio tour, which was that he, I think one of the anniversaries of Forrest Gump, he showed up and sat. They had the bench from Forrest Gump on the studio, and he showed up with a box of chocolates and sat on the bench in his costume and handed out chocolates, to people who were walking by, which I think is just like a total Tom Hanks kind of story. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that's what they told. But yeah, so let's. I love the studio tours. Do you want to talk a little bit about food? LA's a good city for food. It really is.
LA is good city for food, and a lot of it again also revolves around sort of celebrity culture in the city.
Yeah.
One place we loved was a restaurant called Koi, sushi restaurant in West Hollywood, very known as sort of a celebrity sighting spot. The Ivy is another popular brunch spot, another good celebrity sighting spot.
Yeah.
But I also love the farmers markets. There's the LA farmers market, which is right near the Grove.
I love it there.
Great food there, and lots of good options. And also in downtown LA, which is definitely a little bit more gritty part of the city, but they have a great Grand Central market there. A lot of great authentic Mexican food there. Ton of different pop-up food vendors. So both those are markets that definitely worth heading out to. I know you've got some favorite restaurants in LA as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I can't agree more on both the farmers market. You got the Grove right there as well. So there's kind of a two shot, you've got two things that you can do at the same time. CBS Television City's not too far from there, so there's a lot in that area. And I do love Grand Central Market. That was a bit of a revelation. On my most recent trip to Los Angeles, I spent quite a bit of time in downtown LA. And, you do hear a lot of negative things about downtown LA, and there are certain blocks that maybe are not the best, but there really, it really was a bit of a treasure trove of cool and unexpected experiences, I will say. And Grand Central Market, I've been many times to the city, never been to Grand Central Market. And there were so many options, different parts of the world that were represented. And, it's a market that has been there, I believe, for more than 100 years. And it had that patina of history. It had those layers of history, but also the cool, funky, modern feel. Lots of really, really great places to eat and drink. And I'm just going to mention a place also that's not far from there. It's also downtown LA, called Astrid, which was actually, it's an interesting name. And you think, what is this place? It's in the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and it is true California cuisine with elevated local ingredients. And I had a really, really excellent meal there as well. And, not a place maybe I would have explored on my own, but had a connection who set up the dinner, and it was really spectacular place. So, if you're going to a concert there, worth it, but probably worth it anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about the food scene in LA is, being that it's a place on the West Coast with so many direct flights into Asia, you really see that Asian influence in cuisine all throughout the city, right? They've got some phenomenal, there's a whole Koreatown with some great very authentic Korean restaurants, some great Japanese restaurants.
Yeah.
Probably the best Vietnamese restaurant I've ever eaten at was in Anaheim, just outside of LA. So you really see that Asian influence coming through in cuisine throughout the city, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I'm just looking back on my notes. I just have one other place to give a little mention, which is, classic place called Musso and Frank. It's been there again, many, many decades. Really, I love the old Hollywood feel. Anywhere I can go, and Musso and Frank still has the waiters and the jackets, and it's been featured in so many Hollywood films. I know Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that was the Tarantino film. And it was, played a prominent role the first 10, 15 minutes of that movie. And you really feel like you're stepping into the past in all the best ways. The food is excellent too, but the feel, one of my favorite places to eat in the city. And I just want to mention really quickly before we move on to our final thoughts and final notes, we're going to do a bonus episode. And I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite crime fiction authors, who writes about, is Michael Connelly. He wrote The Lincoln Lawyer. He wrote the Harry Bosch series, which has been turned into, I believe it's on Amazon, a regular TV series with several seasons. And the places, often restaurants, and the characters, often real people, in his books are real. They're real people, they're real places. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about an article I wrote for a magazine about retracing this author's steps in Los Angeles. What are your can't miss tips? What are your final thoughts, Damon?
Two things I'll throw out in terms of sort of can't miss final tips. We've talked a little about studio tours, but the other thing I would recommend is check into show tapings as well, because that you've got to do a little bit before got to do some legwork and some research ahead of time.
Yeah.
I know we managed to land a Jimmy Kimmel taping one of the times we were there. They had Coldplay playing. Unfortunately, they pre-taped Coldplay, so we didn't actually get to see them, but we got to see all the other guests on the show.
Great.
And they're free, right? So that's totally worthwhile. A lot of game shows. I think Price is Right tapes there. I don't know if that's still in the air even. But
I went to the Price is Right. I did. I missed a flight to go to the Price is Right once. That is a true story. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other can't miss, I would say, I've been to LA a ton of times, and we had always wanted to go there, but never went there until this most recent trip, is the Griffith Observatory. It's one of those iconic, classic LA, places overlooking the city up in the Hollywood Hills near the Hollywood sign. And I don't know why I didn't figure this out ahead of time, but it is an actual working observatory, right? There's all these great space exhibits.
Yeah.
And you would think, being in LA, like with all the light pollution, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see a lot. Quite the opposite. You're in this, mountaintop park. It's like clear, dark skies, amazing views. They've got multiple telescopes you can look through. It's free. It's a great place for a date night. It's very, we went on a Friday night, jam-packed with locals and people there. Lots really cool atmosphere, lots going on, and some of the best nighttime views of the city that you'll find anywhere. So really glad that we carved out some time to make it up there this time around.
Amazing. I love it.
What are your can't misses?
I've got a couple. I mean, for sure, TV show tapings. I'm a big fan of doing that as well. I did. Jimmy Kimmel's kind of my white whale. I've tried to get Kimmel tickets a couple times, and it just never worked out. I even went in kind of the rush line, couldn't get in. But Price is Right. I did Conan O'Brien. I almost said Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. His television show. I did a couple of his sitcoms even. I love it. I'll just say quickly, I did an architectural tour. We're talking about downtown LA again. The kind of revitalized district, kind of a surprising part of LA that people don't necessarily think about going to. A lot of Art Deco. A lot of buildings that once they're beautiful on the outside, they're even more beautiful on the inside. And when you have a guide that can take you through and talk about the significance of, I believe it's a group called the LA Conservancy that does these tours. And I had an excellent guide who just really went into the history and talked about the significance of these buildings. And then, what is more iconic than the Hollywood sign? I did a kind of a almost like a backcountry hike to the Hollywood sign, and you go in the kind of the quiet way. You feel like you could be out in the middle of the woods, and then you emerge with this beautiful sweeping view of LA, and you've got the Hollywood sign right there, and you're going to get the best picture. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes or something, but you'll get the best picture of the Hollywood sign, you and the Hollywood sign, that you're ever going to get anywhere in LA. So doing a hike to the sign is, it's worth it. It's worth it. So it's very easy. I'm not a big hiker, but it was a simple, easy hike. So
I didn't realize about the Hollywood sign. I thought it was lit up. At least now, when we were there just a week ago, they don't light it up at night. So if you're going to go see the Hollywood sign, you got to go during the day if you actually want to.
Go in the daytime.
Yeah.
Good tip. Absolutely. Yeah, go in the daytime. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we went to go get pictures of it from the Griffith Observatory, thinking we'll get these great nighttime shots.
Yeah, great views from the Griffith Observatory too. Yeah. So absolutely. Well, I guess we've done a little bit of a dive into LA. A city I love. I feel like we could talk about it for hours. But yeah, thank you so much, David, for this chat, and looking forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good. And we'll come back shortly with another bonus episode with a little bit more on LA here this week as well.
Absolutely. And I guess we should mention, helpful if people leave a review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. So please do that as well if you're enjoying this podcast.
And check out all of our different travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks again, David.